Hi, I'm Norah O'Donnell, and this is Person to Person. Our guest is tennis superstar and entrepreneur, Serena Williams.
The greatest of all time.
She stopped playing competitive tennis just before her 41st birthday, with the most Grand Slam wins of any American in open-era history, winning 23 Grand Slam singles over her nearly three-decade career. Williams dazzled on the court in her signature outfits and off the court as a businesswoman, owning a clothing line, jewelry line, and her own venture capital firm.
I know how debilitating a migraine can be.
She's now a paid spokesperson for Ubrelvy, which treats migraines in adults. Williams has been outspoken about her own battle with the condition, and she joins us from her home in Florida to highlight the issue.
Serena Williams, thank you for joining us on Person to Person. How are you?
Thanks for having me, first of all. I'm good. I'm really good. I'm just really good.
Good. Well, it looks beautiful there in Florida. Last time I saw you, you were with Gail King on the farm. How are the animals? Any new animals on the farm?
Yeah, Florida's been really good. The weather's always so nice here. I just feel so grateful for that. Yeah, no new animals. I don't think Alexis can handle any more animals because I only do dogs. So yeah, no new ones as of yet.
Well, it has been 5 months since you played at the U.S. Open. Do you miss playing tennis?
Has it been?
Yeah.
Actually, I do. I definitely do. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's been that long. But yeah, I miss playing. I've been doing it my entire life, so I think it'll be something I will forever, always miss.
I know you don't like the word retired, but since it has been almost half a year since the U.S. Open, how are you feeling about that word now?
I didn't retire. I evolved. I think there's a huge difference. I think there's a lot of people that, whether they're CEOs of a big company and they leave or they retire to go to another company, they're still working, and I'm doing the same thing. I feel like I'm not retired. I'm not laying around and really enjoying the fruits of my labor, but I feel like, I just kind of am doing more things and in business and, just so many different things. And so it's like an evolution, and I just feel like I like that word better. I think I'm allergic to the retirement word. You're never going to get me to say that.
Well, that's good, because I actually think the evolution word is better. And I agree with you. And you've had such a physically demanding career. And now I feel like you have a really challenging business career. You're doing so much. Sort of explain to people who don't know all the different things you're involved in.
Yeah, my tennis career was incredibly physical, as you know, and it was really incredibly mental. And now, through the evolution, just doing everything I do in business, I think the physical and mental of tennis completely prepared me for what I'm doing in business. So I'm running S Ventures, Serena Ventures. It's a venture company that I've been investing for over 10 years, actually. So a lot of people don't know that. I was a low-key angel investor, and then eventually I did a fund, and we invest in women and women of color, and we also make sure we have diversity in a lot of the companies that we invest in. I think that's super important. That's kind of one of our ethos that we like to do. Also, I run a fashion company still, so there's a lot of exciting things with that. And then I just launched a brand called Will Perform, which was exciting to do as well. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the Serena Williams camp, and I continue to do and to be a part of some really amazing, exciting work and things of just increasing knowledge for so many platforms.
How does that translate? Because you've talked about being such a perfectionist at the sport of tennis. How does it translate with business? And how do you decide what to invest in? Because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that comes across your desk.
Yeah, I think it translates. It's an interesting way, because as a perfectionist, like in tennis, if I made a mistake, I would just go nuts, which Yikes, yeah, that was me. But that's just what I wanted to always be the best. And I think it's the same thing that I do in business. It's like, I still want to do the best, but it's different. You can't have that perfectionist attitude because I also invest in early stage companies. So it's super important to understand that we invest so early that not 100% will make of them and will make it. And it's still like, okay, I'm like, okay, yeah, I understand that 100% won't make it, but how do I get 100% to make it? And that's the Serena in me. Yeah, that's the Serena in me coming out. But I understand that's just really not realistic. But I always try to, when I'm investing in companies, I always try to set myself up to think, okay, how do I make the best investment to make this come out, to make us winners? And so we really do tons of due diligence, and we do tons of just looking at companies to make sure how we can support it and how we can make it be the best company. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of fun, you know? It's something that I've always enjoyed, and it's really fun.
Mm-hmm. So, and given that, I mean, are you able to relax at all? I mean, I've read and listened to many of the interviews you've given, and you say you still have trouble relaxing.
Yeah. I haven't yet. I haven't figured out the formula to relax. I feel like I'm getting better at it in terms of constructing my day to have time off. But then, of course, the time off goes to my daughter, and that's never super easy. But at least I'm getting that. This morning I did sit down for like an hour and did nothing. Actually, I turned on the TV and I started watching a movie, which is something I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's huge for me. That was like a really big win for me. But yeah, so I'm slowly, ever so slowly, super baby steps, figuring out a way to relax.
That's wonderful. And how is Olympia doing? Is she playing tennis?
Olympia's doing good. She doesn't actually like to play tennis too much. So that's a little disappointing for me, but she's actually really good at it. So we are trying to figure out a way to get her to play a little bit.
And I know you told Gail that Olympia's been pressuring for a sibling. Maybe she would want to play tennis more if she had a sibling.
Right? Who knows, though?
I know with my two girls, I have them play tennis and they play golf. And their golf instructor says that with girls, it's social, at least for golf. They need a teammate or a playmate, and then they're more likely to do it.
Yeah, you know, Olympia loves being social. And it's interesting because I don't think growing up playing tennis, I don't think I loved being social, but looking back, I was always with my sisters. So obviously it was super social. So that makes sense that, you know, that girls like to have that social sport, and it's a social aspect of that. I think it's actually super, super important. And she loves being around friends. She loves going to school, you know, so it's, I think that's an interesting point. I definitely, maybe I can push her into tennis by getting other kids to have like a group lesson. I think that's what I'm going to do. You just gave me a nice clue, because I really want her to play at least a little bit, because she's actually really good at it.
Yeah. Serena, I don't think you're going to have any trouble arranging that play group.
I'll do it though and see.
Yeah.
Hopefully I won't have any trouble.
All right. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk to Serena about her lifelong battle with migraines. And we're back with Serena Williams. And Serena, I know something you've talked about that surprised a lot of people is your lifelong battle with migraines. You played tennis through migraines?
Yeah, migraine has actually affected me for a very long time. I remember when I was younger, as a teenager, I didn't realize that I was having migraine. I just thought that I would always say, I have a headache, I have a headache, I have a headache. But as I got older, I understood that I was suffering from migraine, and it was very difficult. Imagine losing a match because you have a migraine. But migraines are very, very difficult to deal with, and they're very painful, and sometimes you have to perform and you have to be able to go out there, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to have to do that every day and just to kind of just put your pain in the back of your mind and just kind of deal with it. And, you know, they're very serious, you know, problems. So that's one of the reasons why I partnered with AbbVie. I wanted to raise awareness for the underrepresentation of migraine.
And when you had migraines and you told people you were suffering from these debilitating headaches, what was the response you got?
Well, a lot of people couldn't believe that I wanted to talk about my migraine, right? Because I feel like for some reason it's like a stigma to talk about it. And then so many people came in and were like, I suffer from migraine. And I was like, I didn't know that. And it was such good feedback to listen and to learn how many people actually suffer from migraine that don't really talk about it. I think it's so important to, start that conversation because there are things that you can do to help. And I feel like suffering in silence is something I've done for so many years. And I tell you, it's not fun showing at Wimbledon and court one and like the third round and, you have a migraine, but you still have to perform because no one in the crowd and no one that's watching on TV understands anything, but this is a player, she's going to play and she has to win. So it's like you have to continue to perform no matter what.
So there have been tournaments where you were suffering a migraine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been many times because it's been happening for so many years, but and obviously not all the time. I think some of the adrenaline that would happen to me just getting ready for the match, whether I was suffering from a backache, a knee ache, or a migraine, the adrenaline would just kind of get me through it.
Yeah. Okay, Serena, this adds a new level to the greatest of all time, that you achieved all that you did while suffering from migraines. Because as you know, I'm sure, and people have told you that for many people that suffer with migraines, it's like get under the covers and stay in bed all day.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, it was important for me to talk about it, and I couldn't necessarily go under the covers and just avoid lights. And, it's like I said, to pull out because you have migraine, even though they're so intense, a lot of people don't really understand that, and that's why I thought it was really important to just tell my story without realizing everything that would come back from it.
Mm-hmm. I know you are a paid spokesperson for a drug. What was it like to find a solution that worked for you?
It was great to find a solution. It took me years to arrive, first of all, at a migraine diagnosis, but I'm also happy to say that after the journey, I was able, with the help of my doctor, who actually recommended Ubrelvy for me, I was able to work with that and have a prescription that could treat my migraine attacks in adults, as an adult. Like when I was younger, I never had that opportunity. The most common side effect in the clinical trials were actually nausea, tiredness, and certain medications, of course, can't be taken with it.
So I know there's a huge disparity when it comes to migraines, but I was actually stunned when we looked into the numbers. Only 47% of Black people with symptoms are diagnosed with migraines compared to 70% of white people with the same symptoms. What does that tell us about how our healthcare system treats people of color?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I think a lot of the subject that I've talked about in the past few years is how people of color are treated different in healthcare and just raising awareness for that. And I didn't even know that disparity in migraine until I started learning more about it. And I think one of the symptoms is just, first of all, black people and people of color often don't feel comfortable talking about pain, or they just do suffer in silence or don't mention it. And at the same time, unfortunately, some doctors feel like pain level in certain people doesn't count as much as it does in other people. And so, that is shocking and very sad to hear, but it's really about just raising awareness, right? And just really talking about it and just having uncomfortable conversations and just making them comfortable and just talking about things that you're suffering from and not feeling bad about it. Because there's absolutely nothing to feel bad about, except for when you're having a migraine attack. That's the only time you should feel bad about it because it can be very painful. But otherwise, it's just like someone would say, my back hurts. It's literally the same thing in terms of having the comfortability to talk about it.
Right, and be able to ask for help, which is so incredibly important. When we come back, I want to talk about maternal fetal health for women and also about Black History Month when we come back. And we're back with Serena Williams. And Serena, you've talked about this before, that you nearly died after giving birth to Olympia. And your sharing that story, I think, has raised so much awareness about the disparity in maternal health for Black women. Have you seen any positive changes since then?
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen a ton of changes. It's interesting. I shared my story not expecting to get that much feedback. I literally was just sharing my story. I think everyone has a birth story, right? But my story was my story. And then so many people started to talk about how, unfortunately, Black moms don't get the same care. And I learned that there's colleges, or I don't know if there still are, I really hope not, that was telling some of their future doctors that this is how Latina moms work, this is how Black moms work, this is how white moms are. Like the Black moms don't need a lot of care, the Latina moms, they don't need a lot of care. And that was really shocking. And I thought that that's why this is happening, because the teachers that are teaching this are telling their students that, you know, Black women don't need care as mom, and that they can handle a lot more pain. So I think it's important for me, just authentically telling my story got so many people to talk about the conversation, and in a real authentic way, right? Because that's what we want to have, is these authentic conversations.
Well, it's a very authentic conversation, and it's an incredibly important topic. I feel so passionately about it, too. This should not be a problem. Women should be able to get the health care.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're a mom, it should be the happiest time of your life, right? And it should be the most exciting time to do exciting things and to be with your child. And also, it's the most scary time. I know for me, it was very frightening. I didn't know what to expect. And you don't really know. You just kind of push it in the back of your mind, and then all of a sudden you're there and you're like, oh my gosh. But yeah, so it should also be a happy time. So for that to be such an issue and such a disparity, it's talk about the word unfair.
Yes, unfair is exactly right. But I do think the awareness about it is incredibly important, and there has been new awareness about it, not only because of what you have done, but others in the medical community and the press as well, I hope, have brought new attention to it. February is Black History Month. You have done so much to inspire so many people in sports, athletes. When you look at the game of tennis and the people that you've inspired too, how does that make you feel?
You know, it makes me feel great. I just played tennis to be the best that I could be, and then I played tennis to be the best in the world, and to be number one. And, you know, through that, without realizing it, you inspire people. And then it feels good to know that you can inspire people, and also feels a little humbling, like, wow, I inspired you. That's kind of cool. Because at the end of the day, I just feel like I'm just myself. And so, it's really incredible to have been put and given such a great talent to be able to be an inspiration as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, that T-shirt that your husband wore that said the greatest female athlete of all time with the female crossed out, after he was pictured with that in the stands, I went and bought that shirt too. Because I just think that not only to wear it, but wear it proudly, but for my daughters to see too.
They don't do that on the opposite side, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know any guy who won a Grand Slam when they were 9 weeks pregnant. Like you, Serena Williams?
Yeah, that was a little crazy, though. I don't know. I don't know how that happened.
But you knew you were pregnant, right? You knew you were pregnant.
I did. And it was crazy because I couldn't play long points. So if you go back and look at it, all my points are like 5, 6 balls. And if they were longer than that, I would lose the next point. But nobody picked up on it, so I was happy.
Well, it's been incredible to watch. All right, so our final question, we do ask people on person to person, and this seems like a ridiculous question to ask Serena Williams, but what is your superpower?
My superpower? I read people well. I think that's my superpower. Yeah.
Wow.
Can't hide it from me.
Wow, that's a good superpower. That translates on the court and off, no doubt. Serena Williams, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Always good to talk to you as well.
Hi. Hi, I'm Norah O'Donnell, and this is Person to Person. Our guest today is alpine skier Mikaela Shiffrin. Mikaela Shiffrin is the most successful ski racer of all time. She smashed through records to win her 88th World Cup title earlier this year at the giant slalom in Andorra. Despite her success on the slopes, Shiffrin has been outspoken about her mental health struggles and launched a documentary series on YouTube to show her life between runs. Shiffrin was just named one of Time 100's most influential people of 2023, so we sat down with her for an intimate person-to-person conversation. Mikaela Shiffrin, thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm just got back from a training camp in Norway. I've just arrived in the U.S. last night, and I'm like a little jet lagged, but otherwise I'm doing pretty well.
We have been covering your successes here at CBS News, and so it's so exciting to talk to you. The most successful alpine world skier ever, breaking records in alpine skiing for men and women. What brought you to this moment?
Probably too many things have brought me to this moment than we can actually cover right now. The one thing that I could not do without doing this sport, getting to this level, my family, my coaches. Yeah, I mean, you don't rise to the top of ski racing without an incredibly strong and wide, far-reaching support system.
You have broken more records in alpine skiing, not just for women, but for men too. You are at the top of the field in your game right now.
Yeah, thank you. It's been going well. It's a little bit funny to talk. I mean, I've been talking about it a lot lately, but this season was quite, it was a record-resetting season, and it's actually hard to put a definition on that, what it means or how I really feel about it, but it's just, it's pretty wild to compete in ski racing over these years, over the course of my career, the last 12 years on the World Cup, but especially right now in my life, after so many things have happened just in the last 2 to 3 years, to be here now, it's pretty surreal, I guess.
How hard have you trained physically to get to this moment?
It's, physical. I mean, it's a lot of physical preparation for skiing. And I wouldn't say that I train physically harder than the other athletes and my competitors, but I really value intensity of training and also the volume. So I've been known to ski in general more often and more runs than most of my competitors, but the gym training, the work that you do off the snow, it's one of the most key pieces of ski racing. You have to be in such good physical shape, strong, yet also agile. So you have to weigh the balance of cardio versus strength training versus core training versus agility. You have to be a really well-rounded athlete. So it's, we're spending 4 to 6 hours training our conditioning every single day during the off season when we're not racing. And then when we are racing, you train on snow every morning, and then you have a dry land session after training every day too. So it's just kind of constant physical work, I guess.
Mikaela, you were just named to Time magazine's list of 100 most influential people. What does it mean to be called a pioneer?
I mean, the recognition I've received in response to this season it's been pretty overwhelming. And Time 100, it's pretty wild. I think I'm proud, but my family, my coaches, the whole team, we're all really incredibly proud, because that's recognition that the sport of ski racing doesn't get on a daily basis, that's for sure. And recognition that so many people deserve. So whatever I've been able to accomplish through my career, and especially this season, to be able to receive that people found it interesting and wanted to watch and want to follow along with the sport, that's something I'm really, really proud of. Like moving the needle on intrigue to share this sport that I love with more people globally. And that in turn helps my teammates. It helps other athletes wanting to get into snow sports. It creates a platform for us to actually, to really work from in the sport. So it's really exciting.
I want to ask you, because Lindsey Vonn wrote about you saying, with Serena Williams stepping away from tennis, there's room for another big female global sports superstar, and Mikaela can fill that opportunity. That's a big role, Mikaela. Are you ready for it?
That's a big role. That's a big role. I don't feel that any one person can fill those shoes. I certainly cannot fill those shoes, but I also feel like there's an incredible number of female sports stars who are able to carry that opportunity together, and there's so many who are willing to and are stepping up to the plate, and that's actually kind of what we need. We don't really need one individual female sports star who takes over the planet. We need a lot of women doing sports really, really well, and that's what we're starting to truly get. So it's incredibly flattering, but I more see it as maybe more of a group effort than I ever did before.
You and Lindsey Vonn are icons in this sport, and I bet competitors. What's your relationship like?
My greatest idol was Lindsey, and we come from incredibly different generations. I was so starstruck by her that it kind of maybe created a little bit of a barrier. When you're around someone who really, like, you're in awe of them, you don't really become friends in that level that maybe a lot of the world expected. But on the same side, the other part of the world expected that there was an enormous rivalry. For me, she's just been someone who paved the way for female ski racers, and she's paved the way for me. And maybe I've carried the torch on some level, but the things that I achieved this year, I think that stirred up a lot about Lindsey's career. And what I hoped more than anything was that there was never any talk about Lindsey's career being different. Her career was insane. It's something that will live forever. Her legacy, it cannot be touched. And it doesn't matter what I achieve because we run different paths. So that was one thing that I hoped throughout all of this, with Lindsey and also with Ingemar Stenmark. I want their legacies and their histories in our sport. I want it to exist in its own right and to never be considered something that was broken, because it can't be broken. That's why I started saying resetting record instead of breaking records, because I don't like the idea that anyone would think that what they achieved was touched or changed or shifted. It was a springboard.
All right, Mikaela, stand by. We're going to have much more with her coming up, including how she's handled challenges on the slopes. We like to talk about turning trials and tribulations into triumphs. Is there a time someone told you that you couldn't do something that made you work even harder?
You know, I feel like I've been lucky in life and in my career in sports. Most people haven't told me that I can't. It was more that most people just have never known what to expect or what's really possible. In general, throughout my entire career, when I talk about any ambitions that I have, a lot of, especially when I was younger, I mean, if I would talk about winning, for instance, winning the overall title in the overall World Cup title, I was talking about this when I was 16 years old, and that, you know, nobody does that at 16. Nobody even dreams about it at 16. But I was there talking about it with teammates like, no, this is something I want to do, and I want to do it in the next, 3 to 4 years of my career. And everybody would look at me like, what? Why are you even thinking about that? What's your rush? And what? It wasn't so much like saying you can't. It was just sort of, it was kind of this sense of shame for having those ambitions. And that was more of, maybe more of my struggle was trying not to feel ashamed for being ambitious.
Well, this is a big deal when it comes to women. I mean, who made you feel ashamed for being ambitious?
It's not really anyone in particular. It's It's like, it's more just I guess a general vibe you get. There was never any harmful intentions. It was just like this 16-year-old girl comes in saying she wants to be the best ski racer in the world. And, you know, ski racers are trying to do that every single day of their careers. And, you know, some are 28, 29, 30, 32 years old, and they haven't quite reached their goals. And they look at you like, come on, you know, you think it's that easy? I've been doing this for years. It's not a walk in the park. And I think there's some level of almost a jadedness towards kind of fresh blood that comes into sport with, you know, wide-eyed, kind of excited to be there, and you want to win, and you think you're going to be the next greatest thing. And it boils down to how much you're able to focus, how hard you're willing to work, how much you're able to respect those around you and the knowledge that they do have and learn from that.
How have you faced setbacks on the slope?
For me, it's kind of the greatest lesson in life, because it's sort of lessons of what you can face throughout life. I've had injuries. I've had injuries that feel like more of a chronic thing. I've had acute knee injuries, and then I've dealt with loss in our family and tragedy on that level, and you know, racing through the COVID years, traveling the world, and the loneliness you feel. You just keep going. Like, it's easy to say that, but not every day in life is going to be perfect. And most people struggle more than they win. And even with me, we talk a lot about the records and everything that I achieved through my career and everything that came to fruition this season specifically. And it's easy to think that it's all been good. But I've raced far more races than I've won. Far more races have been disappointing throughout my entire career. And people do struggle on a daily basis. So it's important to realize that struggle and resilience is not, I don't think nobody's a stranger to those feelings. You struggle every day, and you find a way to be resilient through that and keep going back and keep, you know, attacking your problem on a different level, or just finding ways to find solutions. Humans are so resilient.
I know, Mikaela, you talked about dealing with these struggles. Your dad passed 3 years ago suddenly. How did that change you?
My dad, he was very much a guiding light for me throughout life. And I would say he still is. I just, you know, you can't communicate with him. I can't talk with him anymore. So I find myself wondering what he would have said to me then, or wishing I could know what he would say to me now. The biggest change in my life has been maybe gaining a little bit of a different perspective than I ever had before, and realizing that ski racing is important to me, but it's not the most important thing. And everything in my life, everything falls in line behind family. But still, I still need to be able to do the things that I love. So it's more just like forcing yourself to keep taking steps forward.
How old were you when you were first put on skis?
I was 2.5 years old.
And who put you on skis?
My mom and my dad put me on skis the first time. In our house, actually.
So they've been your #1 supporters.
Yeah, they have been. My #1 coaches and #1 guides. I mean, the one thing my parents always said to me is throughout my whole ski career, even before I started racing World Cup, every year we'd sit down and they'd ask if I still was happy skiing. And that was the first thing, is like, if you're happy doing this, we want to support you. But first, make sure you're happy. A lot of people think that my parents pushed me a lot because it seems like champions don't rise to the top of sport without somebody who's kind of driving them or nagging them. And I always felt like their first concern was whether I had the capacity and the passion to do it first. And then I was like, okay, what can we do to help?
That was smart of your parents. As someone who's a parent of teenagers, very smart to make sure that it's you who's, you know, engaged in driving it and happy still doing it. I understand your father was an anesthesiologist who used clinical science to develop some of the original programming methods for you. What was his secret behind that? What were some of his methods?
I think my dad, I mean, having a medical and scientific background, he also just had a huge interest in physiology, and he was able to guide us in that kind of process. And just the body mechanics, like for a woman especially, women have much greater risk of ACL injury overall because of the way your hips sit and the way that your knees, the Q angle that you have, and the valgus motion when you're training. And that's there's a lot of research being done about that now. But my dad was kind of looking into those issues when I was 10, 12 years old, and he was teaching me, squat position and making sure that my knees were in a really neutral position, and just body weight training. But that actually I think helped my legs develop in like a more straight way.
Yeah.
Basically. Mm-hmm. And over time, I think that's actually been a huge reason why I've been able to avoid certain injuries for this far in my career.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's brilliant on the part of your dad. I know you talked about your struggle with memory issues after he passed. Has that improved? Yeah, my memory has improved a lot. I felt like, I couldn't remember the courses when I'd inspect a race course. I really couldn't. The visualization factor, that was something I'd always been really, really good at, was lacking, and I just constantly felt like I was in a fog and unable to remember key pieces of a course or skiing, or if I did remember it, then it took so much mental energy to do that I didn't have enough energy for the second run. Is that because you were still grieving? Yeah, I mean, the grieving process, I would say, never really stops, but I think time also really does help. You start to go through the motions of life, what you used to do the things that are important to you. And as you go through it, it's kind of like relearning life, and it takes a lot of time to do that. And for a while, the focus, and it's something that a lot of people talk about with grief after you've lost someone you love, especially if it's in a sudden and traumatic way, you experience like energy loss, memory loss, a lot of different pieces that can affect how you work, and you don't realize it at the time. But I noticed a difference this year when I started racing again, that I was able to remember courses better and keep my mental energy throughout training days and race days a lot better than the previous 2 years. Mikaela, thank you. And when we come back, we'll talk to Mikaela Shiffrin about inspiring the next generation. Mikaela, what's your message to young girls who want to ski like you? You're going to find throughout life that individuality is your most important asset, and it's the same in skiing. And you just need to take the sports figures that you love and you idolize the most, and you take the best pieces of them, and you find your own perfect formula for yourself, and that's your best chance at succeeding. The records that I reset this season, they're not untouchable. It's somebody's coming up, and somebody's going to reset those again. And the only way they're going to do that is with a support system and with motivation, work ethic, and their ability to explore themselves through skiing and their own individuality and make the sport their own. Well, that's a very inspiring message. Mikaela Shiffrin, always a delight to talk to you. Thank you.